Picture this. You're a young woman in the 15th century Hungary, and you've just been summoned to serve at the castle of Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Your mother weeps as she adjusts your simple dress, knowing she'll never see you again. The other girls in your village who went to serve the countess never came back. Their families received word they died of illness, but everyone knows the truth. The screams that echo from the castle towers at night tell a different story. As the carriage pulls away, you catch a glimpse of your father's face, twisted with the guilt of a man who just sold his daughter's life for a few silver coins. You're about to enter a world where noble women, blessed with absolute power and cursed with absolute ruthlessness, turn harsh punishment into an art form that would make even hardened executioners pale. The iron doors of Chaktich Castle close behind you with a sound like a tomb sealing. You're led through corridors that smell of age and fear, past rooms where muffled sobbing leaks through thick oak doors. The other servants avoid your eyes. They've learned that acknowledgement breeds attachment, and attachment in this place only multiplies the pain when another girl disappears. You're assigned to the kitchens at first, a mercy you don't yet understand. The girls who work upstairs, attending directly to the countess, age years in weeks. Their eyes go dead long before their bodies follow. Elizabeth Bathory wasn't born a monster. She was crafted by centuries of inbreeding, political marriages, and the absolute power that nobility wielded over the powerless. Her family tree was a twisted vine of cousins marrying cousins, creating a genetic lottery where brilliance and madness were separated by the thinnest of lines. She spoke 4 languages, was educated in mathematics and science, and could discuss theology with bishops. But behind those intelligent eyes lurked something else, something that saw human hardship not as tragedy, but as entertainment. Your first glimpse of the countess comes 3 weeks into your service. She sweeps through the kitchen examining the servants like a butcher evaluating livestock. Her dress costs more than your village produces in a year. Her fingers, adorned with rings that could feed a family for life, trace along your jawline with a touch that fills you with unease. She's beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, all sharp edges and deadly purpose. When she smiles at you, every instinct in your body screams to run. But there's nowhere to run in a castle surrounded by mountains and guarded by men who answer only to her. The first girl you see harsh punishment is Anna, a seamstress who made the mistake of pricking the countess's skin while adjusting a dress. The punishment happens in the courtyard where all servants are forced to watch. Anna is punished cruelly in front of everyone, the countess ensuring that the lesson is as humiliating as it is severe. When it's over, Anna is dismissed from service. You learn later that dismissed girls don't leave the castle. They go to the dungeons, where worse things than crushed fingers await. The countess's harsh punishment chambers weren't hidden. They were integrated into the castle's daily life, as normal as the kitchen or the stables. You pass by them on your errands, hearing sounds that will haunt your dreams forever. Sometimes it's screaming. Sometimes it's worse, a kind of animalistic moaning that doesn't sound human anymore. The countess employs 3 women, specifically trained in the art of pain. Dorothea, Katerina, and Ilona, peasant women who've discovered that inflicting hardship on others is preferable to enduring it themselves. You watch these women work with a dedication that would be admirable if applied to anything else. They know exactly where to place hot irons to cause intense pain without killing too quickly. They understand how much blood a body can lose while consciousness remains. They've perfected techniques passed down through generations of harsh punishments, refined and enhanced by their mistress's specific tastes. The countess often watches their work, offering suggestions, corrections, innovations. She treats harsh punishment like other noblewomen treat embroidery, a skill to be perfected through practice and patience. Winter brings new horrors. The countess discovers that she devised cruel punishments using the freezing winter cold, leaving those who suffered exposed as grim displays of her power. You're forced to walk past these frozen girls every morning, some still alive, eyes shifting in frozen faces, unable to scream, unable to die, preserved in agony until the Countess grows bored and has them shattered with hammers. But Elizabeth Bathory wasn't unique in her ruthlessness. She was simply the most documented. Across Europe, noble women wielded harsh punishment as a tool of power, pleasure, and control. In England, Queen Mary didn't just execute Protestants. She ensured their deaths were public spectacles of prolonged agony. Men and women were publicly executed in prolonged displays of punishment, feeding the very fires that consumed them. The Queen would watch from her window, refusing to let the executioners strangle those who suffered before the flames reached them, insisting that heretics should feel every moment of hell's preview. The noble women who ordered these harsh punishments weren't seen as aberrations by their contemporaries. They were defenders of faith, guardians of order, divinely appointed rulers whose ruthlessness was simply God's will manifested through their hands. When Margaret of Anjou had her enemies' children murdered in front of their parents before executing the parents themselves, she was praised for thoroughness. When Isabella of France had her husband Edward II murdered by having a hidden method used to ensure death without leaving external marks, ensuring no external marks would show on the corpse, courtiers admired her cleverness. Your education in noble ruthlessness continues as you're promoted to chambermaid, a position that brings you dangerously close to the Countess's inner circle. You learn that she's developed a particular interest in blood, not metaphorically, but literally. She believes that obsessed with strange rituals involving blood of those who suffered will preserve her youth and beauty. The logistics of this belief are nightmarish. The Countess becomes obsessed with strange rituals involving blood, convinced they would preserve her youth and beauty. The smell is something that never leaves you. Metallic scent and something else, something that smells like fear made tangible. The Countess emerges from these baths convinced she looks younger, demanding mirrors, preening at her reflection while red drops fall from her hair onto Persian rugs that will be burned because the stains never come out. You and the other chambermaids clean up afterward, mopping stains with the same matter-of-fact efficiency you'd use for spilled wine. To show emotion is to mark yourself as weak, and weakness in this castle is a death sentence pronounced in screams. The harsh punishment instruments in the castle multiply like a disease. The Countess commissions new instruments from metalworkers who ask no questions about their purpose. There's the Iron Maiden, lined with spikes positioned to pierce non-vital areas, ensuring hours of agony before death. She used instruments designed to cause prolonged hardship, crafted with elaborate engravings to display wealth as much as ruthlessness. Each instrument is decorated with elaborate engravings, turning instruments of agony into works of art, because even harsh punishment must be beautiful when practiced by nobility. You begin to understand that for these noble women, harsh punishment isn't just about causing pain. It's about control, about the power to reduce human beings to nothing more than sources of entertainment. The Countess keeps detailed records of her experiments, noting which techniques produce the most interesting reactions, which those who suffered last longest, which screams are most musically pleasing to her ears. She approaches harsh punishment with the dedication of a scholar, the creativity of an artist, and the enthusiasm of someone who's found their life's true passion. The political protection these women enjoyed was absolute. Elizabeth Bathory was related to kings and princes. Mary I was queen by divine right. Isabella of France was daughter to a king, wife to a king, mother to a king. Who would dare challenge them? Local authorities who might have investigated the disappearances were either paid off, threatened into silence, or simply chose not to see what was happening. The Church, which should have been a moral authority, was too entangled with political power to risk confronting noble women who made generous donations and supported the right causes. Spring arrives with a fresh batch of servant girls, and you realize with horror that you've become senior staff. You're the one teaching new girls where to go, what to do, how to survive another day. You hate yourself for the efficiency with which you prepare them for horror, But the alternative is watching them stumble blindly into harsh punishment chambers, and somehow that seems worse. You develop a system of subtle warnings, a language of glances and gestures that might buy them another hour, another day of life. The Countess's appetites grow more extreme. Simple, harsh punishment no longer satisfies. She wants elaborate scenarios, theatrical productions of hardship. Girls are forced to fight each other with knives, the winner earning another day of life. Others are forced inside animal carcasses and left to suffocate or struggle to escape. Some are smeared with honey and left exposed as a cruel display. Each harsh punishment is a performance, and the Countess is both director and audience, adjusting the scene for maximum impact, calling for different implements, different positions, different sounds. You learn about other noble women across Europe who share the Countess's tastes. In Italy, Lucrezia Borgia doesn't just poison her enemies. She tests new poisons on servants first, documenting how long each takes to work, what symptoms manifest, how much hardship can be inflicted before death provides mercy. In Russia, Darya Saltykova brutally punished servant girls using logs, clubs, and hot irons, killing at least 38 that authorities will later confirm, though everyone knows the real number is much higher. These women create networks of ruthlessness, sharing techniques through coded letters, gifting each other harsh punishment instruments for special occasions. They compete to see who can devise the most creative punishments, who can break a spirit fastest, who can keep a victim conscious longest during severe mutilation. It's a social club built on hardship, where membership requires noble blood and a complete absence of mercy. The day comes when you're selected for the Countess's personal attention. Not for harsh punishment, not yet, but for a different kind of horror. She wants you to assist in her harsh punishments, to hold down the girls while they're branded, to force feed them before their blood is drained, to clean the instruments between uses. She watches your face as you comply, looking for signs of enjoyment or revulsion, either of which might seal your fate. You learn to keep your expression blank, to move through these nightmares like a sleepwalker, present but not present, doing what must be done to survive another day. The psychological damage of what you witness and participate in creates fractures in your mind that will never fully heal. You stop sleeping because the dreams are worse than waking. You stop eating because everything tastes like blood. You stop feeling because emotion is a luxury you can't afford. You become a ghost, haunting your own body, going through motions that have no meaning beyond survival. The Countess's harsh punishment sessions become more frequent, sometimes multiple times per day. She's addicted to the power, the control, the sound of hardship. She develops favorites among her harsh punishment implements, naming them like pets, having them decorated with jewels and gold. She commissions portraits of herself surrounded by her instruments, wanting to be remembered for her innovations in the art of pain. One night, you're awakened by screams different from the usual. These are the screams of someone who's never screamed before, someone who thought their position protected them. You later learn it was a minor noblewoman who'd come to visit, who'd seen too much, who'd threatened to report what she'd witnessed. Her nobility didn't protect her. Nothing protects anyone from the Countess except being more powerful than her, and in this region, no one is. The economics of harsh punishment in noble households are staggering. The Countess spends fortunes on her harsh punishment chambers, importing rare woods for custom instruments, hiring the best metal workers to create new implements, paying physicians to keep those who suffered alive longer. She employs a full-time staff dedicated solely to harsh punishment, specialists who've made careers from causing pain. The money that could build schools, hospitals, or feed the hungry instead funds an industry of hardship. You begin to recognize patterns in those who suffered. They're always young, always female, always from families too poor to investigate their disappearances. The Countess is careful never to take girls from powerful families, never to harsh punishment anyone whose death might cause problems. It's calculated ruthlessness, strategic hardship designed to maximize pleasure while minimizing consequences. The harsh punishment chamber becomes more elaborate over time. The Countess adds mirrors so those who suffered can watch their own destruction. She installs acoustic panels to amplify screams. She creates viewing galleries where special guests can observe her work. It becomes a theater of ruthlessness where every element is designed to enhance the experience of causing and witnessing pain. You learn that noblewomen across Europe have similar chambers, similar staff, similar systems for procuring those who suffered. It's an open secret among the nobility, something everyone knows but no one discusses. At grand balls and royal weddings, these women exchange knowing looks, subtle references to their shared hobby. They're members of an exclusive club where the price of admission is paid in other people's blood. The breaking point comes when you recognize a new victim, your younger sister, sold by your parents who could no longer afford to feed her. The Countess selected her specifically because she knew of your connection, wanting to see if family bonds could override the numbness she's cultivated in you. You're forced to watch as your sister is harsh punishment, forced to participate, forced to choose between her quick death and prolonged agony. Something inside you shatters completely. Not breaks, but shatters, leaving pieces that can never be reassembled into who you once were. You comply with the Countess's demands, you do what must be done, but something in your eyes changes. The Countess sees it and smiles, satisfied that she's finally broken you completely, but what she doesn't understand is that completely broken people have nothing left to lose. The end of Elizabeth Bathory's reign of terror came not from moral outrage but from political necessity. She made the mistake of inflicting harsh punishment young women from lesser noble families, crossing the invisible line that had protected her for so long. Investigations began, evidence was collected, testimonies were gathered. 300 witnesses came forward. The harsh punishment chambers were documented. The bodies were counted. At least 80 girls confirmed dead, though everyone knew the real number was much higher. But even then, her noble blood protected her. While her accomplices were executed, Elizabeth Bathory was merely confined to her castle, walled up in a room with only a slot for food. She lived 4 more years in that self-made tomb, dying unrepentant, still convinced that her noble blood gave her the right to harsh punishment and kill whoever she pleased. You survived, physically at least. You testified at the trial, your words helping to seal the Countess's fate. But survival and living are different things. You're free now, but freedom means nothing when your mind is still trapped in that castle, when every scream you hear could be your sister's, when every noble woman you see could be hiding harsh punishment chambers behind their silk and jewels. The other survivors scatter like seeds in the wind. Some join convents, seeking God's mercy for sins that weren't theirs. Others disappear into cities where anonymity might offer escape from memories. A few, broken beyond repair, simply walk into forests and never return. You choose to bear witness, to tell the story to anyone who'll listen, to ensure that the girls who died in that castle aren't forgotten, even if remembering means reliving the horror every day. History would remember Elizabeth Bathory as the Blood Countess, a singular monster whose ruthlessness was an aberration. But you know the truth. She was just one of many noble women who discovered that absolute power over the powerless could be fashioned into entertainment. Across Europe, in castles and palaces, similar horrors unfolded with similar impunity. The only difference was that Bathory got caught. The noble women who practiced harsh punishment weren't insane. That would be too simple, too comforting. They were rational, educated, cultured people who simply didn't see those who suffered as human. They viewed harsh punishment the way others viewed, hunting or music, as a skill to be developed, a pleasure to be savored, an art to be perfected. They created hardship with the same deliberation they used to plan banquets or commission paintings. The legacy of these harsh punishment queens extends beyond their individual those who suffered. They normalized ruthlessness among the nobility, making harsh punishment an acceptable tool of governance and entertainment. They created networks and systems that would persist for generations, teaching their daughters and nieces that power meant the right to cause pain. They turned hardship into spectacle, making harsh punishment a social activity where noble women could bond over their shared interest in human agony. Mary I of England executed nearly 300 Protestants during her 5-year reign, many of them women whose only crime was reading the Bible in English. She would have prayer sessions while the executions took place, claiming that the screams of heretics were music to God's ears. She insisted on detailed reports of each burning, wanting to know how long those who suffered lasted, what they said in their final moments, whether they recanted before the end. Isabella of France didn't just murder her husband. She systematically destroyed everyone who'd supported him, using harsh punishment to extract confessions that justified more harsh punishment. She had men executed by dismemberment, their body parts displayed across England as warnings. She had women burned as witches based on confessions obtained through harsh punishment. She created a reign of terror that would influence English politics for generations. Catherine de' Medici in France turned harsh punishment into statecraft, using it not just to punish but to terrorize entire populations into submission. During the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, she orchestrated the harsh punishment and murder of large numbers of Huguenots. She didn't just order deaths, she specified methods, insisting on public harsh punishments that would serve as examples. Even the most vulnerable were not spared, with ruthlessness extending to families as a whole. These women weren't unique to their time. Throughout history, when women gained absolute power in systems that permitted ruthlessness, some chose to exceed even men in their creative application of harsh punishment. They had to be more cruel, more creative, more memorable to maintain their power in male-dominated societies. Their harsh punishment chambers became statements of authority, declarations that they could be just as ruthless as any king. Those who suffered of these noble women's harsh punishments number in the thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. Most remain nameless, their stories untold, their hardship unacknowledged. They were servant girls and peasant women, religious dissidents and political inconveniences, people whose lives were deemed worthless by those with power to make such determinations, but naming them all would be impossible. They disappeared into harsh punishment chambers and emerged as bodies to be disposed of quietly. Their families were threatened or paid for silence. Their communities learned not to ask questions when girls didn't return from castle service. They became statistics in a system that counted noble lives as precious and common lives as expendable. The harsh punishment techniques developed and refined by these noble women would influence official state harsh punishment methods for centuries. The instruments they commissioned became standard equipment in government harsh punishment chambers. The psychological techniques they pioneered would be studied and replicated. They contributed to a body of knowledge about human hardship that would be passed down through generations of harsh punishments. What makes these stories particularly horrifying is how harsh punishment was integrated into daily life. It wasn't hidden in secret dungeons but practiced openly in castles where diplomats visited and balls were held. Noble children grew up hearing screams from harsh punishment chambers the way modern children hear traffic. It was background noise in a world where causing pain was just another privilege of power. The end of widespread noble harsh punishment came not from moral evolution, but from political change. As centralized governments grew stronger, the arbitrary power of individual nobles was curtailed. Legal systems developed that, while still favoring the powerful, at least required some pretense of justice. The Enlightenment brought ideas about human rights that made open harsh punishment less acceptable, though it certainly didn't eliminate it. But even as official harsh punishment declined, the impulse that drove these noble women to harsh punishment didn't disappear. It transformed, finding new expressions in colonialism, in slavery, in all the systems where one group of people gains absolute power over another. The harsh punishment chambers of medieval castles gave way to colonial plantations, concentration camps, and secret prisons, where the same dynamics of power and hardship play out. Today, we look back at these harsh punishment queens with horror and incomprehension. How could educated, cultured women cause such hardship? How could entire societies permit such ruthlessness? But these questions assume a moral evolution that may be more fragile than we think. Given the right circumstances, the right power dynamics, the right dehumanization of others, could similar horrors emerge again? The survivors of noble, harsh punishment, those few who lived to tell their stories, carry truths that history would prefer to forget. They remind us that ruthlessness isn't aberrant but human, that given absolute power and absent accountability, ordinary people can become monsters. They witnessed what happens when human beings are reduced to entertainment, when hardship becomes sport, when power recognizes no limits. You survived the castle, but you never really left. Every noble woman you see could be hiding harsh punishment chambers. Every scream in the night could be another girl dying for someone's pleasure. Every castle and palace stands as a monument to hardship, built on foundations of cruelty and echoing with the voices of the harsh punishment. The stories of noble women who harsh punishment aren't just historical curiosities. They're warnings about the human capacity for ruthlessness when power goes unchecked. They remind us that education and culture don't prevent evil, that nobility of birth doesn't guarantee nobility of character, that the veneer of civilization is thinner than we'd like to believe. In the end, what these harsh punishment queens reveal isn't just the darkness of the past, but the eternal vigilance required to prevent such darkness from returning. Every generation must choose whether to permit or prevent the harsh punishment chambers, whether to be complicit or resistant, whether to look away or bear witness. The screams from those medieval castles echo through time, asking what we'll do when we hear screams in our own time, from our own harsh punishment chambers, hidden behind different walls, but practicing the same cruelties. True power is not proven by ruthlessness. It is measured by compassion, restraint, and the value placed on every human life.